Hello. Good afternoon, everybody who is joining me for yet another Jane Eyre read along. With you is your chattering magpie. And yes, we are in session 7, and after all this time, after 11 chapters, we finally are going to meet the love interest of the story. So the funny thing is, any romance novel or whatever that's strictly romance has the male and the female have their meet cute, or the protagonist and their romantic interest have their meet cute very early on, because it's all about the romance. Romance is what drives the story. In this case, while the book is a romance of sorts, spoilers, everybody. It's in the blurb. Come on, you guys. So, while there is some aspects of romance, this book is far more than just a romantic tale. Like I said, it's more of a coming-of-age story where the people that Jane Eyre meets are the agents by which she learns, she grows, she becomes a grown-up, gets, forms her own ideas of identity, of society, of self-actualization, freedom, all these things that as young adults we have to get through. But yes. So yes, like promised, today we are going to meet we're going to meet the protagonist, Mr. Rochester. So I think maybe I can try to get through chapter 13, but for sure we're going to get chapter 12. I don't know. It depends on how long chapter 12 is. It's shorter than last reading's chapter. So we'll see. I don't know. Fingers crossed. But before I do, I just want to say hello to the early gang. Early gang, hello. Happy to see Teal. Teal, you win today as the first person on the chat. I love it. It says early gang. That's so adorable. Yes. Says, hey, early gang, looking forward to how Jane does as governess. Adele didn't seem too difficult, but she didn't strike me as studious either. Yeah, Adele is just a child. You're not going to get a prodigy out of her. She's no genius. She's a product of her education. So far, she's been with her mama in France. And, her mama, the things that she taught her were how to sing like operettas. And just to charm and amuse other people. That's what she knows. That's all she knows about her life. So they're gonna temper that side of her character with some good English education. So Jane has her work cut out. She has to make a proper pupil out of little Adele. But luckily Adele doesn't seem to be a willful, spoiled child. She's, she might sometimes be like, I'm bored of the education, but she's not gonna be like outright misbehaving. So that's good. Lucky Jane. So yeah, we'll have more Adele soon. Hello, Crusher, says early gang reporting for duty. Greetings. I'm glad. Okay, you know what? Teal, it has caught on. Now we're gonna call everybody who joins us, we're gonna call them the early gang. Whether they're early or not, all of you guys who are listening and joining me for the Chattering Magpies read-alongs of Jane Eyre is the early gang. So hello. Noodles, Dumplings, Kimchi says, OMG, I'm actually on time. Hello, fellow bookworms. Hello. Are you going to be working out on your treadmill? I have been working all day today, you guys, so this is like me finally getting some rest. Well, maybe not all day because I woke up a little late, but I have behind me my rebounder. So anytime I need to just like take a break, like every hour or so, I get up and get on the rebounder and rebound. It's like a mini trampoline, and it's pretty good. I felt my legs a little sore. I hadn't been working out for a while on the trampoline or the little rebounder, so I felt it after like 5 minutes or so. It really has been a while since I did that. But anyway, if you're working out, if you're walking, driving, I hope you enjoyed today's read along. We also have Red Tempest Hello, Red Tempest says Governess Jane will start singing Do Re Mi song. You know, it's funny you say that. Today in the morning while I was doing my breakfast food or whatever, I was singing, I was belting out that song on like us in the kitchen, and the people living with me, they were like, yo, what the heck? And then when somebody works from home, like just as I do. So today they're here working from home, and they told me to hush up, so I did. But then like I totally forgot that I was supposed to hush up. So the next song I jumped to in, you know, the Magpie Jukebox, I sang "Climb Every Mountain." You know, the song that the abbess sings to Mariah to tell her to, you know, look for her dream or whatnot. So I was doing that thing with my falsetto soprano, doing my high notes. It was amazing. And later on I was like, oh shoot, I forgot I was supposed to be really quiet. Anyway, so those are that's life with Magpie. You're gonna hear me chattering or singing or doing whatever. Like, I cannot live without music or just something to liven up life. I cannot handle silence. At least not when I'm just, you know, doing things around the house. Always a song. So if there's any music you guys ever like to listen to when you clean up, when you have breakfast or whatnot, let me know what you like to listen to. I like soundtracks. I like what else? I like I'm trying to think, but right now everything that comes to mind is soundtracks, 80s and 90s music. And I actually just formed a playlist that's I don't know why I didn't do this, but it's called the Sundays Vibes. So there was a song, I went shopping and I Shazammed the song that I really liked, and it was from the Sundays, and I was like, oh, I like this song. So I started making a playlist. So it's the Sundays Vibes. It has Sixpence None the Richer. It has, I don't know, just all kinds of things. I thought it was a nice song. So I've been building up playlists. Anyway, so yeah, let me know what music you like to listen to. But yes, Do Re Mi. Except this is not that kind of story. Unfortunately, this is not, you know, cheery Sound of Music in the Alps. This is depressing, dark Thornfield Hall in the middle of winter, unfortunately. So yeah, let's see how Jane does in her first winter in Thornfield Hall. All right. Teal, good for you. Yes, everything's going according to plan. Yes, you can now trademark Airlings. Airly gang, Airlings. All right, so good for you, noodles, dumplings, kimchi. You did 10,000 steps earlier today. Good for you. Yeah, it's always good to keep up a good habit. That's an excellent habit. And okay, so I'm a loser, baby, says noodles, dumplings, kimchi, that they like to listen to. Who sings that? Also, Jihyo Jingle says, hello, Jihyo says, I love bandero music when you're cooking early in the morning. Ooh, I dig, I don't know if it's bandero, but I like banda music sometimes, like to do a good quebradita while cleaning up around the house, dancing with the escoba. I can't think of the English word now. The broom. Yeah, Red Tempest also says, I play Mexican music when I'm in a cleaning mood, or just movie, anime soundtrack, or 70s and 80s songs. Yeah, me too. And my cleaning playlist always, especially the one that's just Spanish or whatever Mexican music, always has to start off, like, no matter what, I always start with Selena. Just, I don't know, something about Selena just gets me really hyped up. So that, and I like some songs by Los Angeles Azules. Sometimes, yeah, I like all kinds of music. So anyway, keep on dropping your songs in the comments. I think it is time to continue on our read along. It is 5:10. Ooh, Crusher says that he just posted some memes in the Discord channel. Well, I'll check them out as soon as I finish this this read along. I'm about to get started. We're 10 minutes in. I hope everybody that was going to join us is here. I didn't want them to miss any part of the story. But yeah, let's get this started. Let's see if we can get into chapter 13, if not all of it. All right. Chapter 12. The promise of a good career, which my first calm introduction to Thornfield Hall seemed to pledge, was not belied on a longer acquaintance with the place and its inmates. Mrs. Fairfax turned out to be what she appeared, a placid-tempered, kind-natured woman, of competent education and average intelligence. There's something about saying that somebody has average intelligence that just, it's not an offensive phrase, but it feels wrong, you know? I would not like it if somebody said I was of average intelligence, though that probably is the truth since I'm such a bird brain. But anyway, Mrs. Fairfax, I like her. Okay? But yeah, she's just not a very inquisitive person, as we saw in the previous chapter. All right, and then here's Adele. My pupil was a lively child who had been spoiled and indulged, and therefore was sometimes wayward. But as she was committed entirely to my care, and no injudicious interference from any quarter ever thwarted my plans for her improvement, she soon forgot her little freaks and became obedient and teachable. She had no great talents, no marked traits of character, no peculiar development of feeling or taste which raised her 1 inch above the ordinary level of childhood. But neither had she any deficiency or vice which sunk her below it. She made reasonable progress, entertained for me a vivacious, though perhaps not very profound affection, and by her simplicity, gay prattle, and efforts to please, inspired me in return with a degree of attachment sufficient to make us both content in each other's society. This, par parenthèse, will be thought cool language by persons who entertain solemn doctrines about the angelic nature of children and the duty of those charged with their education to conceive for them an idolatrous devotion. But I am not writing to flatter parental egotism, to echo cant, or prop up humbug. I am merely telling the truth. I felt a conscientious solicitude for Adele's welfare and progress, and a quiet liking for her little self, just as I cherished towards Mrs. Fairfax a thankfulness for her kindness and a pleasure in her society proportionate to the tranquil regard she had for me and the moderation of her mind and character. Anybody may blame me who likes when I add that further that, now and then, when I took a walk by myself in the grounds, when I went down to the gates and looked through them along the road, or when, while Adele played with her nurse and Mrs. Fairfax made jellies in the storeroom, I climbed the 3 staircases, raised the trap-door of the attic, and having reached the leads, looked out afar over the sequestered field and hill and a long dim skyline. That then I longed for a power of vision which might overpass that limit, which might reach the busy world, towns, regions full of life I had heard of but never seen. That then I desired more of practical experience that I possessed, more of the intercourse with my kind, of acquaintance with variety of good character, than here was within my reach. I valued what was good in Mrs. Fairfax, and what was good in Adele, but I believed in the existence of other and more vivid kinds of goodness, and what I believed in I wished to behold. Who blames me? Many, no doubt, and I shall be called discontented. I could not help it. The restlessness was in my nature. It agitated me to pain sometimes. Then my sole relief was to walk along the corridor of the 3rd story, backwards and forwards, safe in the silence and solitude of the spot, and allow my mind's eye to dwell on whatever bright visions rose before it. And certainly there were many and glowing, to let my heart be heaved by the exultant movement, which, while it swelled it in trouble, expanded it with life, and best of all, to open my inward ear to a tale that was never ended, a tale my imagination created and narrated continuously, quickened with all of incident, life, fire, feeling that I desired and had not in my actual existence. It is in vain to say human beings ought to be satisfied with tranquillity. They must have action, and they will make it if they cannot find it. Millions are condemned to a stiller doom than mine, and millions are in silent revolt against their lot. Nobody knows how many rebellions, besides political rebellions, ferment in the masses of life which people earth. Women are supposed to be very calm generally, but women feel just as men feel. They need exercise for their faculties and a field for their efforts, as much as their brothers do. They suffer from too rigid a restraint, too absolute a stagnation, precisely as men would suffer. And it is narrow-minded in their more privileged fellow creatures to say that they ought to confine themselves to making puddings and knitting stockings, to playing on the piano and embroidering bags. It is thoughtless to condemn them or laugh at them if they seek to do more or learn more than custom has pronounced necessary for their sex. All right, so here's a I want to make a parenthesis. Just I don't know. It's important to notice here when she wrote this book, she wrote it under like a different name, nom de plume, and so and people did not know if it was a man or a woman that wrote it. Because of the Courier Bell was just very androgynous. They could not know if it was a man or a woman. But it was like a lot of, or more than a few, I'm not going to say a lot, but more than a few people that read and reviewed this book, they said this is a woman writing this book. Like, she writes extremely well, but it's a woman. Like, no man could like write this kind of like stuff because and I believe it's because she brings up things that usually it's not expected that men of that time would ever consider as something that women are, are thinking, like their inner lives. Like, she is expressing something that I'm sure women of that time who could not go to work, who were bound by society to remain at home, whether as daughters or as wives, who could not enjoy higher education or have their own property. All of these things, these were issues that people took for granted. But she in this book, she brings up questions about the way society works. And it is because of these kind of questions and these commentaries about how women shouldn't be expected to live with inactivity without a purpose. This is why people like said, oh my goodness, this book is scandalous. So I am just saying, people thought this was the kind of book that people said, like, let's ban the book. Like, I know here in the States, there's a whole issue right now with banning books. But yeah, like back in the day, this was a book that could have been banned because of the opinions that the heroine expressed, which were deemed not feminine or not maidenly. Another thing that we also notice is how she does a commentary on the governess life and the attitude of a governess on her pupil. So it is a governess is a human being. Like, she doesn't have to make her student her entire world. Like, her world does not revolve around her student. She has a life. Like, yeah, she regards her pupil with the proper affection, but she's not going to be a slave to the child. Or, and these are, again, attitudes that people back then, they had about hired governesses. Because, again, if you were a governess, yeah, you weren't outright a servant, but you also had your cross to bear. Like, it wasn't an easy job to be a governess, especially with the attitudes that people had and how sometimes you could end up with a boss that was just terrible or kids that were terrible, and you were expected to deal with it because the child is always right. The child, So anyway, just wanted to point those things out as we read. We have both Jane commenting what I believe Charlotte Brontë was trying to say about society in that time. And I think it's absolutely on point. Whether or not the people of her time were ready to hear this, that's a different story. All right, let's continue on. Okay, where were we? More than custom was pronounced necessary for their sex. Oh, and by the way, hello, Liz. Happy to have you here. Aw, and Red Tempest has to go. Okay, no worries. Hope you enjoy the rest of the rewatch later on. Take care, darling. Okay. And wishing you all the best. All right, continuing on. When thus alone, I not infrequently heard Grace Poole's laugh. The same peal, the same low, slow ha ha, which, when first heard, had thrilled me. I heard too her eccentric murmurs, stranger than her laugh. There were days when she was quite silent, but there were others when I could not account for the sounds she made. Sometimes I saw her. She would come out of her room with a basin or a plate or a tray in her hand, go down to the kitchen, and shortly return. Generally, oh romantic reader, forgive me for telling the plain truth, bearing a pot of porter. Her appearance always acted as a damper to the curiosity raised by her oral oddities. Hard-featured and staid, she had no point to which interest could attach. I made some attempts to draw her into conversation, but she seemed a person of few words. A monosyllabic reply usually cut short every effort of that sort. The other members of the household, viz. John and his wife, Leah, the housemaid, and Sophie, the French nurse, were decent people, but in no respect remarkable. With Sophie I used to talk French, and sometimes I asked her questions about her native country. But she was not of a descriptive or narrative turn, and generally gave such vapid and confused answers as were calculated rather to check than encourage inquiry. October, November, December passed away. One afternoon in January, Mrs. Fairfax had begged a holiday for Adele because she had a cold, and, as Adele seconded the request with an ardor that reminded me how precious occasional holidays had been to me in my own childhood, I accorded it, deeming that I did well in showing pliability on the point. It was a fine, calm day, though very cold. I was tired of sitting still in the library through a whole long morning. Mrs. Fairfax had just written a letter which was waiting to be posted, so I put on my bonnet and cloak and volunteered to carry it to Hay. The distance, 2 miles, would be and volunteered to carry it to Hay. The distance, 2 miles, would be a pleasant winter afternoon walk. Having seen Adele comfortably seated in her little chair by Mrs. Fairfax's parlor fireside, and given her her best wax doll, which I usually kept enveloped in silver paper in a drawer to play with, and a storybook for change of amusement, and having replied to her, Revenez-toi, my bonne amie, ma chère Madame Jeannette. With a kiss, I set out. By the way, that meant, come back soon, my friend, my dear Mademoiselle Jeannette. So that's what, that was Adele. I should have done it in her voice. And having replied to her, Revenez-toi, my bonne amie, ma chère Madame Jeannette. With a kiss, I set out. The ground was hard. The air was still. My road was lonely. I walked fast till I got warm, and then I walked slowly to enjoy and analyze the species of pleasure brooding for me in the hour and situation. It was 3 o'clock. The church bell tolled as I passed under the belfry. The charm of the hour lay in its approaching dimness, in the low gliding and pale beaming sun. I was a mile from Thornfield, in a lane noted for wild roses in summer, for nuts and blackberries in autumn, and even now possessing a few coral treasures in hips and haws, but whose best winter delight lay in its utter solitude and leafless repose. If a breath of air stirred, it made no sound here, for there was not a holly, not even an evergreen to rustle, and the stripped hawthorn and hazel bushes were as still as the wide, worn stones which causewayed the middle of the path. Far and wide on each side there were only fields, where no cattle now browsed, and the little brown birds which stirred occasionally in the hedge looked like single russet leaves that had forgotten to drop. This lane I inclined uphill all the way to hay. Having reached the middle, I sat down on a stile which led thence into a field. Gathering my mantle about me and sheltering my hands in my muff, I did not feel cold, though it froze keenly, and was attested by a sheet of ice covering the causeway, where a little brooklet, now congealed, had overflowed after a rapid thaw some days since. From my seat I could look down on Thornfield. The grey and battlemented hall was the principal object in the vale before me. Its woods and dark rookery rose against the west. I lingered till the sun went down amongst the trees and sank crimson and clear behind them. I then turned eastward. On the hilltop above me sat the rising moon, pale yet as a cloud, but brightening momentarily. She looked over hay, which, half lost in trees, sent up a blue smoke from its few chimneys. It was yet a mile distant, but in the absolute hush I could hear plainly its thin murmurs of life. My ear too felt the flow of currents. In what dales and depths I could not tell, but there were many hills beyond hay, and doubtless many becks threading their passes. That evening calm betrayed alike the tinkle of the nearest streams, the sough of the most remote. A rude noise broke on these fine ripplings and whisperings, at once so far away and so clear, a positive tramp, tramp, a metallic clatter, which effaced the soft wave wanderings, as, in a picture, the solid mass of a crag, or the rough boles of a great oak, drawn in dark and strong on the foreground, efface the aerial distance of azure hill, sunny horizon, and blended clouds where tint melts into tint. The din was on the causeway. A horse was coming. The windings of the lane yet hid it, but it approached. I was just leaving the stile, yet as the path was narrow, I sat still to let it go by. In those days I was young, and all sorts of fancies bright and dark tenanted my mind. The memories of nursery stories were there amongst other rubbish, and when they recurred, maturing youth added to them a vigor and vividness beyond what childhood could give. As this horse approached, and as I watched for it to appear through the dusk, I remembered certain of Bessie's tales, wherein a North of England spirit called Gytrash, which in the form of horse, mule, or large dog, haunted solitary ways, and sometimes came upon belated travellers, as this horse was now coming upon me. It was very near, but not yet in sight, when, in addition to the tramp, tramp, I heard a rush under the hedge, and close down by the hazel stems glided a great dog, whose black and white color made him a distinct object against the trees. It was definitely one form of Bessie's Gytrash, a lion-like creature with long hair and a huge head. It passed me, however, quietly enough, not staying to look up, with strange pretercanine eyes in my face, as I half expected it would. The horse followed, a tall steed, and on its back a rider. The man, the human being, broke the spell at once. Nothing ever rode the Gytrash. It was always alone, and goblins, to my notions, though they might tenant the dumb carcasses of beasts, could scarce covet shelter in the commonplace human form. No Gytrash was this, only a traveller taking the shortcut to Milket. He passed, and I went on. A few steps, and I turned, for a sliding sound and an exclamation of "What the deuce is to do now?" and a clattering tumble arrested my attention. Man and horse were down. They had slipped on the sheet of ice which glazed the causeway. The dog came bounding back, and seeing his master in predicament, and hearing the horse groan, barked till the evening hills echoed the sound, which was deep in proportion to his magnitude. He snuffed round the prostrate group, and then he ran up to me. It was all he could do. There was no other help at hand to summon. I obeyed him and walked down to the traveller, by this time struggling himself free of his steed. His efforts were so vigorous, I thought he could not be much hurt, but I asked him the question, "Are you injured, sir?" I think he was swearing, but I'm not certain. However, he was pronouncing some formula which prevented him from replying to me directly. "Can I do anything?" I asked again. "You must stand on... No. Oh, yeah. You must just stand on one side," he answered as he rose, first to his knees and then to his feet. I did it, whereupon began a heaving, stamping, clattering process, accompanied by a barking and baying which removed me effectually some yards' distance, but I would not be driven quite away till I saw the event. This was finally fortunate. The horse was re-established, and the dog was silenced with a "Down, pilot!" The traveller, now stooping, felt his foot and leg, as if trying whether they were sound. Apparently something ailed them, for he halted to the stile whence I had just risen, and sat down. I was in the mood for being useful, or at least officious, I think, for I now drew near him again. "If you are hurt and want my help, sir, I can fetch someone either from Thornfield Hall or from Hay." "Thank you, I shall do. I have no broken bones, only a sprain." And again he stood up and tried his foot, but the result extorted an involuntary "Ugh!" Something of daylight still lingered, and the moon was waxing bright. I could see him plainly. His figure was enveloped in a riding cloak, fur-colored and steel-clasped. Its details were not apparent, but I traced the general points of middle height and considerable breadth of chest. He had a dark face, with stern features and a heavy brow. His eyes and gathered eyebrows looked ireful and thwarted just now. He was past youth, but had not reached middle age. Perhaps he might be 35. I felt no fear of him, and but a little shyness. Had he been a handsome, heroic-looking young gentleman, I should not have dared to stand thus questioning him against his will, and offering my services unasked. I had hardly ever seen a handsome youth, never in my life spoken to one. I had a theoretical reverence and homage for beauty, elegance, gallantry, fascination. But had I met these qualities incarnate in masculine shape, I should have known instinctively that they neither had nor could have sympathy in anything in me, and should have shunned them as one would fire, lightning, or anything else that is bright or antipathetic. If even this stranger had smiled and been good-humored to me when I addressed him, if he had put off my offer of assistance gaily and with thanks, I should have gone on my way and not felt any vocation to new inquiries. But the frown, the roughness of the traveller, set me at my ease. I retained my station when he waved for me to go, and announced, "I cannot think of leaving you, sir, at so late an hour, in this solitary lane, till I see you are fit to mount your horse." He looked at me when I said this. He had hardly turned his eyes in my direction before. "I should think you ought to be at home yourself. If you have a home in this neighborhood, where do you come from?" "From just below, and I am not at all afraid of being out late when it is moonlight. I will run over to Hay for you with pleasure if you wish it. Indeed, I am going there to post a letter." "You live just below. Do you mean at that house with the battlements?" Pointing to Thornfield Hall, on which the moon cast a hoary gleam, bringing it out distinct and pale from the woods that, by contrast with the western sky, now seemed one mass of shadow. "Yes, sir." "Whose house is it?" "Mr. Rochester." "Do you know Mr. Rochester?" "No, I have never seen him." "He's not resident, then?" "No." "Can you tell me where he is?" I cannot. You are not a servant at the hall, of course. You are... He stopped, ran his eye over my dress, which, as usual, was quite simple. A black merino cloak, a black beaver bonnet, neither of them half fine enough for a lady's maid. He seemed puzzled to decide what I was. I helped him. I am the governess. Ah, the governess, he repeated. Deuce take me if I had not forgotten. The governess. And again my raiment underwent scrutiny. In 2 minutes he rose from the stile. His face expressed pain when he tried to move. I cannot commission you to fetch help, but you may help me a little yourself, if you will be so kind. Yes, sir. You have not an umbrella that I can use as a stick? No. Try to get a hold of my horse's bridle and lead him to me. Bridle. My horse's bridle and lead him to me. You're not afraid? I should have been afraid to touch a horse when alone, but when told to do it, I was disposed to obey. I put down my muff on the stile and went up to the tall steed. I endeavored to catch the bridle, but it was a spirited thing, and it would not let me come near its head. I made effort on effort, though in vain. Meantime, I was mortally afraid of its trampling forefeet. The traveller waited and watched for some time, and at last he laughed. I see. The mountain will never be brought to Mohammed, so all you can do is to aid Mohammed to go to the mountain. I must beg of you to come here. I came. Excuse me, he continued. Necessity compels me to make you useful. He laid a heavy hand on my shoulder, and leaning on me with some stress, limped to his horse. Having once cut the bridle, he mastered it directly and sprang to his saddle, grimacing grimly as he made the effort, for it wrenched his spring. Now, said he, releasing his under lip from a hard bite, just hand me my whip. It lies there under the hedge. I sought it and found it. Thank you. Now make haste with the letter to Hay, and return as fast as you can. A touch of a spurred heel made his horse first start and rear, and then bound away. The dog rushed in its traces. All three vanished. Like heath that in the wilderness the wild wind whirls away. I took up my muff and walked on. The incident had occurred and was gone for me. It was an incident of no moment, no romance, no interest in a sense, yet it marked with change one single hour of a monotonous life. My help had been needed and claimed. I had given it. I was pleased to have done something, trivial, transitory though the deed was. It was yet an active thing, and I was weary of an existence all passive. The new face, too, was like a new picture introduced to the gallery of memory, and it was dissimilar to all the others hanging there. Firstly, because it was masculine, and secondly, because it was dark, strong, and stern. I had it still before me when I entered Hay, and slipped the letter into the post office. I saw it as I walked fast downhill all the way home. When I came to the stile, I stopped a minute, looked around, and listened, with an idea that a horse's hoofs might ring on the causeway again, and that a rider in a cloak and a Gytrash-like Newfoundland dog might be again apparent. I saw only the hedge and a pollard willow before me, rising up still and straight to meet the moonbeams. I only heard the faintest waft of wind roaming fitful among the trees round Thornfield, a mile distant, and when I glanced down in the direction of the murmur, my eye, traversing the hall front, caught a light kindling in a window. It reminded me that I was late, and I hurried on. I did not like re-entering Thornfield. To pass its threshold was to return to stagnation. To cross the silent hall, to ascend the darksome staircase, to seek my own lonely little room, and then to meet tranquil Mrs. Fairfax and spend a long winter evening with her, and her only, was to quell wholly the faint excitement wakened by my walk, to slip again over my faculties the viewless fetters of a uniform and too still existence, of an existence whose very privileges of security and ease I was becoming incapable of appreciating. What good it would have done me at that time to have been tossed in the storms of an uncertain, struggling life, and to have been taught by rough and bitter experience to long for the calm amidst which I now repined. Yes, just as much good as it would do a man tired of sitting still in a too easy chair to take a long walk, and just as natural was the wish to stir, under my circumstances, as it would be under his. I lingered at the gates. I lingered on the lawn. I paced backwards and forwards on the pavement. The shutters of the glass door were closed. I could not see into the interior, and both my eyes and spirit seemed drawn from the gloomy house, from the grey hollow filled with rayless cells as it appeared to me, to that sky expanded before me, a blue sea absolved from taint of cloud, the moon ascending it in sullen march, her orb seeming to look up as she left the hilltops, from behind which she had come, far and farther below her, and aspired to the zenith, midnight dark in its fathomless depth and measureless distance, and for whose trembling stars that followed her course, they made my heart tremble, my veins glow when I viewed them. Little things recall us to earth. The clock struck in the hall. That sufficed. I turned from moon and stars, opened the side door, and went in. The hall was not dark, nor yet was it lit, only by the high-hung bronze lamp. A warm glow suffused both it and the lower steps of the oak staircase. This ruddy shine issued from the great dining room, whose two-leaved doors stood open, and showed a genial fire in the grate, glancing on marble hearth and brass fire-irons, and revealing purple draperies and polished furniture and the most pleasant radiance. It revealed, too, a group near the mantelpiece. Had scarcely caught it, and scarcely become aware of a cheerful mingling of noises, amongst which I seemed to distinguish the tones of Adele when the door closed. I hastened to Mrs. Fairfax's room. There was a fire there, too, but no candle, and no Mrs. Fairfax. Instead, all alone, sitting upright on the rug and gazing with gravity at the blaze, I beheld a great black and white, long-haired dog, just like the Gytrash of the lane. It was so like it that I went forward and said, "Pilot," and the thing got up and came to me and snuffed me. I caressed him, and he wagged his great tail, but he looked an eerie creature to be alone with, and I could not tell whence he had come. I rang the bell, for I wanted a candle, and I wanted, too, to get an account of this visitant. Leah entered. "What dog is this?" "He came with the master." "With whom?" "With master, Mr. Rochester. He's just arrived." "Indeed, and is Mrs. Fairfax with him?" "Yes, and Miss Adele. They're in the dining room, and John has gone for a surgeon, for master has had an accident. His horse fell, and his ankle is sprained." "Did the horse fall in Hay Lane?" "Yes, coming downhill. It slipped on some ice." "Ah, bring me a candle, will you, Leah?" Leah brought it. She entered, followed by Mrs. Fairfax, who repeated the news, adding that Mr. Carter the surgeon was come, and was now with Mr. Rochester. Then she hurried out to give orders about tea, and I went upstairs to take off my things. End of chapter. So, we finally got to see Rochester. He doesn't say who he is when he meets Jane Eyre on the lane. No doubt for some mischievous reason of his own. But yeah, we have Mr. Rochester. Again, Jane is in desperate need of some change in her life, which can probably spell a bit of trouble. Like when you're just looking for something of interest, you will fix upon anything. So here's Jane, super bored with her life, but she does say, like, this is like in hindsight, she recognizes that, yeah, when you're at that young age, you don't appreciate, the relative comfort, safety, stability of a life, of just, the stability of life. You want, excitement, you want new people. And it's absolutely true. it's not until you get much older, at least I feel that I'm much older than you, begin to appreciate, the joys of just having a stable home and stable job. Stability is good. Now, I don't know, catch me like a decade ago, I would have been like, no, let's travel the world. Let's go off-roading and do all these adventures. Let's do crazy things. And yeah, I was all about that life. But now I'm just like, no, how about we just stay home and do quiet, wholesome activities? Anyway, but then that's just me, I guess. Probably some of you guys will never, or some people don't ever outgrow that need for like adventure or like new places, new horizons. After you live and travel and you read and you meet people, you kind of stop wanting it. So like, yeah, like after I got out of school and I worked and met people and traveled, I was like, okay, this is fun, this is nice, but I'm beginning to appreciate my home life. So I think that's what Jane needs a bit here. But for now, remember, she's very young. She's like 18, so she hasn't seen any of the world. And also, she does point out that in all her life, she's never, met people, especially men. Like, she has never, like, think about it. She was a little kid growing up at Gateshead Hall. Who was there? Just her aunt, a whole bunch of servants, her cousins, and one male cousin. Then she met maybe the apothecary, maybe one time or two times. That's it. Then Mr. Brocklehurst, and that's it. Then she went to school, and she was living with female teachers, with female fellow classmates. So she has lived a very limited life, has not met many people. So this is also why and also knowing that she always was, she was always, even when she was a kid living in Gateshead, she was always drawn to adventure and books on like travels and stuff like that. So it's in her character. She wants to fly. So anyway, let's see. Crusher says Thornfield seems like a nice place, and the servants seem nice as well. But Jane really could use another BFF. Yes, she could. Yeah, it would be nice for her to have somebody. Too bad she's gonna keep things professional. Yeah. That's the issue. You can't just like make a friend out of one of the servants. Like even Leia, like she's a servant. You can't order a friend around. Like the hierarchy of the great big houses back then, it was such that I guess her only equal would be Mrs. Fairfax, because they're both hired directly by Mr. Rochester. So it's difficult. So let's see. Noodles Dumplings Kimchi says, honestly, he should have treated Thornfield like George Washington treated his house. Minimum, maximum, cozy to the max. I think houses should all be cozy. So I don't know what the deal is with Thornfield Hall. We know that Mrs. Fairfax always kept it in readiness for him to arrive at any moment, and good thing she did, because upon him falling from his horse, he is able to be shown to the parlor that's ready, has a fire, so he's getting treated right now. Crusher disagrees with me, says, nah, even when I'm 90, I still want to see the world. Yeah, of course, want to see the world, but like when you're like stir crazy, like you're feverish, like and I think that's, well, maybe not you. I guess I was just generalizing, but at least for somebody like Jane, who says that, after you experience life, you stop feeling like you need to, like you eschew, like you are like against the stability of life. Like, I'm not saying don't travel. I'm just saying, like, even when I travel after like within 3 days of like being in a vacation, I'm like, I just want to go home. Like, even in a vacation, like went to Hawaii last year, and I was like, this is nice, and I love it. But the third or fourth day, okay, fine, maybe the fifth day, I was like, I want to go home. Yeah, so maybe that's just me, you guys. I love my little house. I love my little nest. I I made it cozy. I don't know. That's probably just me. I like to have my creature comforts. All right, so Akihana says, "Oof, missed it again. Haha." Well, I hope you enjoyed the replay, Akihana. And then Crusher says, "Gotta see all the libraries of the world." Yes, indeed. That is actually a good idea. Make a pilgrimage of all the great libraries of the world. Excellent idea. Also, Liz Leper says, after 3 concussions within 6 months, mellowed by my adventures. After 3 concussions within 6 months, mellowed my. Oh no! Oh no, Liz! Man, that's rough. Yeah, usually when after you know, like when you're not in the best of health, or like when you hurt yourself while traveling, that's gotta mellow you out. And just makes you want to stay home closer to safety. But you know, we don't have to let our souls be tied up. We can always travel. Like, we can do like what Jane does, which is what I do a lot. Imagination is, you can let yourself crazy. You can go crazy and let the imagination loose, and that's what she did. She was limited to her world, to Thornfield, but she would pace up and down the gallery and she would imagine things. I'm wondering if she was writing a book. Fanfic. So yes, let's see. Do you guys want me to read a little bit more? I don't know if I can finish the whole chapter. You know what? Since I'm already in the mood to read this, I might as well finish the chapter, do the next chapter. Yeah. Might as well, since we're here. Otherwise, we're never gonna finish this book within 20 sessions. Let's do the next chapter, you guys. All right. Chapter 13. Mr. Rochester, it seems, by the surgeon's orders, went to bed early that night, nor did he rise soon next morning. When he did come down, it was to attend to business. His agent and some of his tenants were arrived and waiting to speak with him. Adele and I had now to vacate the library. It would be in daily requisition as a reception room for callers. A fire was lit in an apartment upstairs, and there I carried our books and arranged it for the future schoolroom. I discerned in the course of the morning that Thornfield Hall was a changed place. No longer silent as a church, it echoed every hour or two to a knock at the door or a clang of the bell. Steps, too, often traversed the hall, and new voices spoke in different keys below. A rill from the outer world was flowing through it. It had a master. For my part, I liked it better. Adele was not easy to teach that day. She could not apply. She kept running to the door and looking over the banisters to see if she could get a glimpse of Mr. Rochester. Then she coined pretexts to go downstairs, in order, as I shrewdly suspected, to visit the library, where I knew she was not wanted. Then, when I got a little angry and made her sit still, she continued to talk incessantly of her ami, Monsieur Edward Fairfax de Rochester, as she dubbed him. I had not before heard his preomens, and to conjecture what presents he had bought her, for it appeared he had intimated the night before that when his luggage came from Millcote, they would be found amongst in a little box in whose contents she had an interest. "Et cela doit signifier," said she, "qu'il aura..." Oh my goodness. Okay, let me try this again. "Et cela doit signifier," said she, "qu'il aura là-dedans un cadeau pour moi, et peut-être pour vous aussi, mademoiselle. Monsieur a parlé de vous. Il m'a demandé le nom de ma gouvernante, et si elle n'était pas une petite personne, assez mince et un peu pâle. J'ai que dire que oui, car c'est vrai, n'est-ce pas, mademoiselle?" Which means, that must mean there's a present for me in it, and maybe for you too, mademoiselle. Monsieur has spoken of you. He asked me my governess's name, and if she were small, rather thin, and somewhat pale. I said yes, because it's true, isn't it, mademoiselle? Small, thin, pale, great. I and my pupil dined as usual in Mrs. Fairfax's parlour. The afternoon was wild and snowy, and we passed it in the schoolroom. At dark, I allowed Adele to put away books and work and to run downstairs. For, from the comparative silence below, and from the cessation of appeals to the doorbell, I conjectured that Mr. Rochester was now at liberty. Left alone, I walked to the window, but nothing was to be seen thence. Twilight and snowflakes together thickened the air and hid the very shrubs on the lawn. I let down the curtain and went back to the fireside. In the clear embers I was tracing a view, not unlike the picture I remember to have seen of the castle of Heidelberg on the Rhine, when Mrs. Fairfax came in, breaking up by her entrance the fiery mosaic I had been piecing together, and scattering, too, some heavy, unwelcome thoughts that were beginning to throng on my solitude. "Mr. Rochester would be glad if you and your pupil would take tea with him in the drawing-room this evening," said she. "He has been so much engaged all day that he could not ask to see you before." "When is his tea time?" "Oh, at 6 o'clock. He keeps early hours in the country. You had better change your frock now. I will go with you and fasten it. Here's a candle." "Is it necessary to change my frock?" "Yes, you had better. I always dress for the evening when Mr. Rochester is here." This additional ceremony seemed somewhat stately. However, I repaired to my room, and with Mrs. Fairfax's aid, replaced my black stuff dress by one of black silk. The vest, the best and the only additional one I had, except one of light grey, which in my Lowood notions of the toilette, I thought too fine to be worn, except on first-rate occasions. "You want a brooch," said Mrs. Fairfax. I had a single little pair. Ah, my goodness. I had a single little pearl ornament which Miss Temple gave me as a parting keepsake. I put it on, and then we went downstairs. Unused as I was to strangers, it was rather a trial to appear thus formally summoned in Mr. Rochester's presence. I let Mrs. Fairfax precede me into the dining-room, and kept in her shade as we crossed that apartment, and passing the arch, whose curtain was now drooped, entered the elegant recess beyond. 2 wax candles stood lighted on the table, and 2 on the mantelpiece. Basking in the light and heat of a superb fire lay Pilot. Adele knelt near him. Half reclined on a couch appeared Mr. Rochester, his foot supported by the cushion. He was looking at Adele and the dog. The fire shone full on his face. I knew my traveller with his broad and jetty eyebrows, his square forehead, made squarer by the horizontal sweep of his black hair. I recognized his decisive nose, more remarkable for character than beauty, his full nostrils, denoting, I thought, choler, his grim mouth, chin, and jaw. Yes, all 3 were very grim, and no mistake. His shape, now divested of cloak, I perceived harmonized in squareness with his physiognomy. I suppose it was a good figure in the athletic sense of the term, broad-chested and thin-flanked, though neither tall nor graceful. Mr. Rochester must have been aware of the entrance of Mrs. Fairfax and myself, but it appeared he was not in the mood to notice us, for he never lifted his head as we approached. "Here is Miss Eyre, sir," said Mrs. Fairfax in her quiet way. He bowed, still not taking his eyes from the group of the dog and child. "Let Miss Eyre be seated," said he, and there was something in the forced stiff bow, in the impatient yet formal tone, which seemed further to express, "What the deuce is it to me whether Miss Eyre be here or not? At this moment I am not disposed to accost her." I sat down, quite disembarrassed. A reception of finished politeness would probably have confused me. I could not have returned or repaid it by answering grace and elegance on my part. but harsh caprice laid me under no obligation. On the contrary, a decent quiescence under the freak of manner gave me the advantage. Besides, the eccentricity of the proceeding was piquant. I felt interested to see how he would go on. He went on as a statue would. That is, he neither spoke nor moved. Mrs. Fairfax seemed to think it necessary that someone should be amiable, and she began to talk, kindly, as usual, and as usual, rather trite. She condoled with him on the pressure of business he had had all day, on the annoyance it must have been to him with that painful sprain. Then she commended his patience and perseverance in going through with it. "Madam, I should like some tea," was the sole rejoinder she got. She hastened to ring the bell, and when the tray came, she proceeded to arrange the cups, spoons, etc., with assiduous celerity. I and Adele went to the table, but the master did not leave his couch. "Will you hand Mr. Rochester's cup?" said Mrs. Fairfax to me. "Adele might perhaps spill it." I did as requested. As he took the cup from my hand, Adele, thinking the moment propitious for making a request in my favor, cried out, "N'est-ce pas, monsieur, qu'il y a un cadeau pour Mademoiselle Eyre dans votre petit coffre?" She said, "There's a present in your little trunk for Mademoiselle Eyre, isn't there?" Ah, Adele, such a sweetheart. she's hoping that there's a gift for Jane among all the stuff he brought. Ah, you precious child. "Who talks of cadeau?" he said gruffly. "Did you expect a present, Miss Eyre? Are you fond of presents?" said he, and searched my face with eyes that were dark, irate, and piercing. "I hardly know, sir. I have little experience of them. They are generally thought pleasant things." "Generally thought? But what do you think?" "I should be obliged to take time, sir, before I could give you an answer worthy of your acceptance. A present has many faces to it, has it not? And one should consider all before pronouncing an opinion as to its nature." "Miss Eyre, you are not so unsophisticated as Adele. She demands a cadeau clamorously the moment she sees me. You beat about the bush." "Because I have less confidence in my deserts than Adele has. She can prefer the claim of old acquaintance, and the right, too, of custom, for she says you have always been in the habit of giving her playthings. But if I had to make out a case, I should be puzzled, since I am a stranger, and have done nothing to entitle me to an acknowledgment." "Oh, don't fall back on our modesty. I have examined Adele, and find you have taken great pains with her. She is not bright, she has no talents, yet in a short time she has made much improvement." "Sir, you have not given me my cadeau. I am obliged to you. It is the meed teachers most covet, praise for their pupils' progress." Said Mr. Rochester, and he took his tea in silence. "Come to the fire," said the master, when the tray was taken away, and Mrs. Fairfax had settled into a corner with her knitting, while Adele was leading me by the hand down the room, showing me the beautiful books and ornaments on the consoles and chiffonneries. We obeyed as if duty-bound. Adele wanted to take a seat on my knee, but she was ordered to amuse herself with Pilot. "You have been a resident in my house 3 months?" "Yes, sir." "And you came from—" "From Lowood School, in Blankshire." "Ah, a charitable concern. How long were you there?" 8 years. 8 years? You must be tenacious of life. I thought half the time in such a place would have done up any constitution. No wonder you have rather the look of another world. I marveled where you had got that sort of face. When you came in to me in Leyhane last night, I thought unaccountably of fairy tales, and had half a mind to demand whether you had bewitched my horse. I'm not sure yet. Who are your parents?" "I have none." "Nor ever had, I suppose. Do you remember them?" "No." "I thought not. And so you were waiting for your people when you sat on that stile?" "For whom, sir?" "For the men in green. It was a proper moonlight evening for them. Did it break through one of your rings that you spread that damned ice on the causeway?" I shook my head. "The men in green all forsook England 100 years ago," said I, speaking as seriously as he had done, "and not even in Hay Lane or the fields about it could you find a trace of them. I don't think either summer or harvest or winter moon will ever shine on their revels more." Mrs. Fairfax had dropped her knitting, and with raised eyebrows seemed wondering what sort of talk this was. "Well," resumed Mr. Rochester, "if you disown parents, you must have some sort of kinsfolk, uncles and aunts." "No, none that I ever saw." "And your home?" "I have none." "Where do your brothers and sisters live?" "I have no brothers or sisters." "Who recommended you to come here?" "I advertised, and Mrs. Fairfax answered to my advertisement." "Yes," said the good lady, who now knew what ground we were upon, "and I am daily thankful for the choice Providence led me to make. Miss Eyre has been an invaluable companion to me, and a kind and careful teacher to Adele." "Don't trouble yourself to give her a character," returned Mr. Rochester. "Eulogiums will not bias me. I shall judge for myself. She began by felling my horse." "Sir," said Mrs. Fairfax, "I have to thank her for this sprain." The widow looked bewildered. "Miss Eyre, have you ever lived in a town?" "No, sir." "Have you seen much society?" "None but the pupils and teachers of Lowood, and now the inmates of Thornfield." "Have you read much?" "Only such books as came my way, and they have not been numerous or very learned." "You have lived the life of a nun. No doubt you're well drilled in religious forms. Brocklehurst, who I understand directs Lowood, is a parson, is he not?" "Yes, sir." "And you girls probably worshipped him." "Ha ha!" Sorry, this is hilarious. And you girls probably worshipped him, as a convent full of religiouses would worship their director. "Oh, no." "Oh, you're very cool." "No? What? A novice not worship her priest? That sounds blasphemous." I disliked Mr. Brocklehurst, and I was not alone in the feeling. He's a harsh man, at once pompous and meddling. He cut off our hair, and for economy's sake bought us bad needles and thread, which we could hardly sew. "That was very false economy," remarked Mrs. Fairfax, who now again caught the drift of the dialogue. "And what was the head and front of his offending?" demanded Mr. Rochester. "Oh, wait. And was that the head and front of his offending?" demanded Mr. Rochester. "He starved us when he had the sole superintendence of the provision department, before the committee was appointed, and he bored us with long lectures once a week, and with evening readings from books of his own inditing, about sudden deaths and judgments, which made us afraid to go to bed." "What age were you when you went to Lowood?" "About 10. "And you stayed there 8 years. You are now then 18? I assented. "Arithmetic, you see, is useful. Without its aid, I should hardly have been able to guess your age. It is a point difficult to fix, where the features and countenance are so much at variance as in your case. And now, what did you learn at Lowood? Can you play?" "A little." "Of course. That is the established answer. Go into the library. If you please. Excuse my tone of command. I am used to say, 'Do this,' and it is done. I cannot alter my customary habits for one new inmate. Now, go then into the library. Take a candle with you, leave the door open. Sit down to the piano, and play a tune." I departed, obeying his directions. "Enough!" he called out in a few minutes. "You play a little, I see, like any other English schoolgirl. Perhaps better than some, but not well." I closed the piano and returned. Mr. Rochester continued. "Adele showed me some sketches this morning, which she said were yours. I don't know whether they were entirely of your doing. Probably a master aided you?" "No, indeed," I interjected. "Ah, that pricks pride. Well, fetch me your portfolio if you can vouch for its contents being original. But don't pass your word unless you are certain. I can recognize patchwork." "Then I will say nothing, and you shall be judged, and you shall judge for yourself, sir." I brought the portfolio from the library. "Approach the table," said he, and I wheeled it to his couch. Adele and Mrs. Fairfax drew near to see the pictures. "No crowding," said Mr. Rochester. "Take the drawings from my hand as I finish them, but don't push your faces up to mine." He deliberately scrutinized each sketch and painting. 3 he laid aside. The others, when he had examined them, he swept from him. "Take them off to the other table, Mrs. Fairfax," said he, "and look at them with Adele. You," glancing at me, "resume your seat and answer my questions. I perceive those pictures were done by one hand. Was that hand yours?" "Yes." "And when did you find time to do them? They have taken much time and some thought." "I did them in the last 2 vacations I spent at Lowood, when I had no other occupation." "Where did you get your copies?" "Out of my head." "That head I see now on your shoulders?" "Yes, sir." "Has it other furniture of the same kind within?" "I should think it may have. I should hope better." He spread the pictures before him, and again surveyed them alternately. While he is so occupied, I will tell you, reader, of what they are, and first I must premise that they are nothing wonderful. The subjects had indeed risen vividly on my mind, as I saw them with the spiritual eye, before I attempted to embody them. As I saw them with the spiritual eye, before I attempted to embody them, they were striking. But my hand could not second my fancy, and in each case I had wrought out a pale portrait of the thing I had conceived. These pictures were in watercolors. The first presented clouds low and livid, rolling over a swollen sea. All the distance was an eclipse. So, too, was the foreground, or rather the nearest billows, for there was no land. One gleam of light lifted into relief a half-submerged mast, on which sat a cormorant, dark and large, with wings flecked with foam. Its beak held a gold bracelet set with gems. That I had touched with as brilliant tints as my palette could yield, and as glimmering distinctness as my pencil could impart. Sinking below the bird and mast, a drowned corpse glanced through the green water. A fair arm was the only limb clearly visible, once the bracelet had been washed or worn. The second picture contained, for foreground only, the dim peak of a hill, with grass and some leaves slanting as if by breeze. Beyond and above spread an expanse of sky, dark blue as a twilight. Rising into the sky was a woman's shape to the bust, portrayed in tints as dusk and soft as I could combine. The dim forehead was crowned with a star. The lineaments below were seen as though the suffusion of vapor. The eyes shone dark and wild. The hair streamed shadowy, like a beamless cloud torn by storm or by electric travail. On the neck lay a pale reflection like moonlight. The same faint luster touched the train of thin clouds from which rose and bowed this vision of the evening star. The third showed the pinnacle of an iceberg piercing a polar winter sky. A muster of northern lights reared their dim lances, close serried, along the horizon. Throwing these into distance, rose in the foreground a head, a colossal head, inclined toward the iceberg, and resting against it. 2 thin hands joined under the forehead, and supporting it, drew up before the lower features a sable veil, a brow quite bloodless, white as bone, and an eye hollow and fixed, blank of meaning, but for the glassiness of despair, alone were visible. Above the temples, amidst wreathed turban folds of black drapery, vague in its character and consistency as a cloud, gleamed a ring of white flame, gemmed with sparkles of a more lurid tinge. The pale crescent was the likeness of a kingly crown. What it diademed was the shape, which shape had none. "Were you happy when you painted these pictures?" asked Mr. Rochester presently. "I was absorbed, sir. Yes, and I was happy. To paint them, in short, was to enjoy one of the keenest pleasures I have ever known." "That's not saying much. Your pleasures, by your own account, have been few. But I dare say you did exist in a kind of artist's dreamland, while you blended and arranged these strange tints. Did you sit at them long each day? I had nothing else to do because it was the vacation, and I sat at them from morning till noon, and from noon till night. The length of the midsummer days favored my inclination to apply. And you felt self-satisfied with the result of your ardent labors? Far from it. I was tormented by the contrast between my idea and my handiwork. In each case I had imagined something which I was quite powerless to realize. Not quite. You have secured the shadow of your thought, but no more probably. You had not enough of the artist's skill and science to give it full being. Yet the drawings are for a schoolgirl peculiar. As to the thoughts, they're elfish. These eyes in the evening star you must have seen in a dream. How could you make them look so clear, and yet not at all brilliant? For the planet above quells their rays, and what meaning is that in their solemn depth? And who taught you to paint wind? There is a high gale in that sky, and on this hilltop. Where did you see Latmus? For that is Latmus. There, put the drawings away. I had scarce tied the springs of the portfolio, when looking at his watch, he said abruptly, "It is 9 o'clock. What are you about, Miss Eyre, to let Adele sit up so long? Take her to bed." Adele went to kiss him before quitting the room. He endured the caress, but scarcely seemed to relish it more than Pilate would have done, nor so much. "I wish you all good night now," said he, making a movement of the hand towards the door, in token that he was tired of her company and wished to dismiss us. Mrs. Fairfax folded up her knitting. I took my portfolio. We curtsied to him, received a frigid bow in return, and so withdrew. You said Mr. Rochester was not strikingly peculiar, Mrs. Fairfax," I observed when I rejoined her in her room after putting Adele to bed. "Well, is he?" "I think so. He's very changeful and abrupt." "True. No doubt he may appear so to a stranger, but I am so accustomed to his manner I never think of it, and then, if he has peculiarities of temper, allowance should be made." "Why?" "Partly because it is his nature, and we can none of us help our nature, and partly because he has painful thoughts, no doubt, to harass him and make his spirits unequal." "What about?" "Family troubles, for one thing." "But he has no family." "Not now, but he has had, or at least relatives. He lost his elder brother a few years since." "His elder brother?" "Yes. The present Mr. Rochester has not been very long in possession of the property, only about 9 years." 9 years is a tolerable time. Was he so very fond of his brother as to be still inconsolable for his loss? "Why, no. Perhaps not. I believe there were some misunderstandings between them. Mr. Rowland Rochester was not quite just to Mr. Edward, and perhaps he prejudiced his father against him. The old gentleman was fond of money and anxious to keep the family estate together. He did not like to diminish the property by division, and yet he was anxious that Mr. Edward should have wealth too, to keep up the consequence of the name. And soon after he was of age, some steps were taken that were not quite fair, and made a great deal of mischief. Old Mr. Rochester and Mr. Rowland combined to bring Mr. Edward into what he considered a painful position, for the sake of making his fortune. What the precise nature of that position was, I never clearly knew, but his spirit could not brook what he had to suffer in it. He's not very forgiving. He broke with his family, and now for many years he has led an unsettled kind of life. I don't think he has ever been resident at Thornfield for a fortnight together, since the death of his brother without a will left him master of the estate, and, indeed, no wonder he shuns the old place." "Why would he shun it?" "Perhaps he thinks it's gloomy." The answer was evasive. I should have liked something clearer, but Mrs. Fairfax either could not or would not give me more explicit information of the origin and nature of Mr. Rochester's trials. She averred they were a mystery to herself, and that what she knew was chiefly from conjecture. It was evident, indeed, that she wished me to drop the subject, which I did accordingly. End of chapter. All right, peeps, that is the 2 chapters for today. So let us talk about what we just read. So we finally got Rochester, and I guess you could say he's very can't quite get a grip on his character. Seems to want to draw her up, but then he's like, okay, get out of here. So very like very changeable. I think one of the adaptations, when they describe it, they call him mercurial, or maybe in the book they call him mercurial. Just suddenly he just changes. Even in his way of life, he just shows up at Thornfield randomly and he leaves randomly. So, and he doesn't stay in Thornfield for a very long time. Mrs. Fairfax said within the time he has owned Thornfield Hall, been its master, he's probably only lived here, like, the accumulation of days, probably a fortnight, so like 2 weeks. That's basically like how many days he spent in the 9 years. It's about 14 days altogether. Ugh, oh my goodness, the poor woman has to keep that house like in absolute readiness for the master, just for him to only hang out there for like 14 days out of 9 years. Dang. Oh well, at least, you know, I should hope he pays her accordingly, and that she has plenty of staff to keep things going. Okay, so we learned a little bit about what we get to see, how he's like. I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me see in the chat. I think somebody mentioned in the chat. Let's see. Good old Blankshire, says Teal. I know. I don't know, like, I wish I could put like a name to these places, but apparently back in the day people were very careful. I don't know why. It's Blankshire. It's just Blankshire. Yeah, Rochester confusing Jane with the spirit of Muskoka. Blue Castle mentioned here, right? She's elfin. Again, he thinks that she has the look of, you know, elves, or like some creature that was just hovering around at night causing mischief. And Jane just, you know, took it with stride. She answered it seriously. But yeah, she's maybe it's not the spirit of the Muskoka, because, you know, they're not in Canada, but maybe she's the spirit of Thornfield. Oh my goodness, no. The spirit of Hay? Spirit of Hay Lane, because that was where she was going? Liz Leper says Rochester is a grumpy man. He does seem very grumpy. He can barely, you know, tolerate Adele from the looks of it, which makes me wonder why he even took her on in the first place. And what's the deal with him and Adele? We can see Adele is fond of him, or at least is very familiar with him. She's not shy to sit with him, to go look for him. She could not concentrate during her studies because she wanted to go and see what was up with him. She plays with the dog. By the way, I don't know, something about Pilot. I thought Pilot is a good dog. He might look like a scary dog, but he's a good boy. I that's what I feel. Like when Jane saw him first, he was sitting, you know, in the, like, close to the fire, just quietly, and then she called his name and he like got up and said hello. What a good boy. But it made me wonder, where's the cat? What happened to the cat? We never see the cat again. All we see is Pilot. Did Pilot eat the cat? Yes, Crusher says Rochester seems very stern and aloof at the same time. Yeah, who knows what's up with him. Liz Leper says he's like the wind. Yeah, you just don't know what's the deal with him. When is he gonna come? Which just randomly shows up like a tempest. But the thing is that with him at home, like, it's like the house comes to life. So yeah, he's grumpy and stuff like that, but you can kind of tell that he's very changeable, very dynamic, and he brings that to home. Like, the place that used to be as quiet as the grave, the way Jane Eyre said, is full of life. So she likes it when the master's at home. Let's see. He seems to me to have quite the active imagination too. Yeah. So he also seems to be able to draw her out in with like talk about, I don't know. Yes, if she had read much, if she had traveled much. So probably the fact that he's just older, not quite 40, but definitely not young. Um I feel a stab to my heart. I'm in my 30s. Not quite young. Yeah, but not yet 40. But he's definitely, lived whatever life, and he's definitely read and traveled a lot more than Jane. So that puts him on, like, makes him at least an object of interest to Jane, or to, you know, especially, yeah, to Jane, who has never traveled and has never really met people. So, but yeah, he seems to have, that makes him an interesting person. They're not like prosaic. He brings up things like, asks questions about her drawings, asks like, makes actually intelligent comments about her art. Like, a lot of times, like, people, they don't know how to talk about art. Well, he can describe them, and like be able to critique them. You know, so again, like, he's seen more of the world than Jane has, and he's able to appreciate, like, the drawings. Again, like, Jane is, I think that's one of her gifts, is she's able to capture things, even though not perfect, because she's still young. She still probably could benefit from more lessons, but what she can do with her talent and her skills that she has is pretty impressive. Even Rochester had to, like, admit it. Let's see. He's definitely no Ferdy. Of course he's no Ferdy. Nobody could be like Ferdinand. Nobody could be his equal. Of course not. For starters, he does not have the beauty of my blue-haired angel. Angel of Wrath. Yeah, he's not a beautiful person. He's like, just very, like, how does she describe it? Like, square, like, solidly built, not tall, not handsome, not beautiful. Just, he's just a dude. But he does have like he's well built, not fat. She did say he was lean. He had lean flanks, so that means that he's not fat. So he's broad-chested, but he's not fat. Yeah, making sure that she made sure to point that out. Let's see. Yeah, the cat is no longer there. Normal cat behavior. Good point, Tia. Probably she was like, yeah, I'm not. Probably the cat was like, yeah, I'm not gonna hang out with this great big dog. I'm gonna go look for another place where I can, overturn cups and whatnot. Because this beast just took my spot. How dare they? Why else would he indeed to be her guardian? Oh, okay. So Ferdinand with Adele. Oh, sorry. Rochester is the guardian of Adele, just in the same way that Ferdinand would be a guardian to Rosamund. So yeah, in a way, they're kind of the same. Kind of keep, like, they don't have sentimental attachment to the child. You can see that Rochester, like, he just kind of like tolerates the kid, like, gives her the things that the kid wants, but he doesn't seem to be, like, fond of her. Like, the girl, like, likes to give him a little kiss, because I'm sure this is, like, mama's training. She tries to, like, ingratiate herself, or at least be pleasant to other people, and Rochester just barely, like, tolerates it. So anyway, yes, thank you, Liz, for not spoiling again, Liz and Crusher and all the other people who have read this book. Yeah, share your thoughts, but again, no spoilers for those folks who have not read this book. Ferdinand with Adele. Imagine Ferdinand having to deal with Adele. Oh boy. Yeah, I don't see that I don't see that going well. He could not. Oh, I was wondering if Adele is his illegitimate niece. Ooh, we're gonna talk about that, but that's a good. That could be a story. We did learn about him having, like, friction with his brother and his father, and they did something to him that that was injurious to him, and I guess he just would not forgive them, and he left them. He left the family, and then now he's back because now he's the master of everything. So, but who knows what this whole predicament entailed? Family troubles and issues are definitely, complicated. So we'll learn about it all. All your questions shall be answered. But for now, I leave you with this read along. And yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this, and rate my French pronunciation. Please be kind. I tried my best. I swear, I practiced going in, but I just got nervous. I don't know. Like, it was fluid. It was perfect. I was like, yes, this sounds nice. Like, probably not like a native, but it sounds nice. And then here I go live and I totally butchered it. I'm so sorry, French speaking folks. I tried, but I'm okay. Here's the trouble. English is not even my native tongue. So I'm speaking French. I'm reading out the French with a not even with a proper English accent, so it's just some weird French reading. Makes things interesting. This leopard does point out, though, that Ferdinand does care for mine, and yes, he does care. Like, the degree of caring is absolutely different. Oh, let us not forget the memes that you guys were kind enough. Who was it? I think Crusher was kind enough to post in the Discord, so let me just fish those out. Let's see. By the way, if you want to join my Ko-fi, if you want to join my Discord server to get access to all these things, then you can always join my Ko-fi, support your magpie. Get over here. Support your magpie, and yeah, it'll be awesome. So here are some memes from Crusher. If one door opens and another one if one door closes and another one opens, your house is probably haunted. Well, welcome to Thornfield Hall. Yeah. Mrs. Fairfax assures Jane that there's no ghost, but I don't know, man. Old houses. Adele Varans, I will protect it. Strongly agree. I want to see it grow up. I want to see it grow up and healthy. Strongly agree. I want to tell my friends and neighbors about it. Strongly agree. So I'm glad that you guys have a fondness for Adele. Like, she's not an annoying child. She's a cute child, and I like the fact that she actually, like, she tries. Oh, who's this? Toby Stevens. So yeah, speaking of this, Toby Stevens, this is the 2006 adaptation. Of course, this is during a break from the recording, but this was Rochester from the 2006 adaptation. I will go and talk about various Rochesters from the previous adaptation. So just wait a second. Let me just finish this. Yes, badass Edward Rochester. He's actually my favorite. It's so hard, but he's definitely one of my favorites, if not the favorite. He's up there. Here's Rochester's horse. Let's look at it again. Full screen. Oh no, this messes up my setup. Well, we're seeing it as best as we can. Let's watch it again. Oh, there goes the guild trash. Oh gosh, this is so adorable. Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you for sharing, Crusher, these memes. And especially this one. I had not seen this one of Toby Stevens. Adding to my gallery. So, okay, let's talk about Edward Fairfax Rochester and the other, and his, and the people that have played him. Okay, so let me go. How can I do this? Okay, starting from the top left, we have Toby Stevens. He's from the 2006 adaptation. That is this one. This is Toby Stevens. That's him right here. Very brooding. I think he's like the Byronic ideal. He really is. Then we have Syrian Hines. This is from the 1997 version, I suppose. He is my least favorite Rochester. Watch the movie. It's on YouTube. You can watch it, though it has spoilers. And it's just not my favorite. I heard somewhere that he took on the role and he did the role without even reading the book. Yeah, well, it shows. Or maybe the people adapting it show, like, they didn't do their job, but, yeah, it was not my favorite. Although he is a superb actor. Don't get me wrong. He's an excellent actor. I loved him in Persuasion, 1995 Persuasion. He did an excellent job there. Though again, he was not my ideal of Wentworth, but still, he did a good job as an actor. We have this guy on the bottom. I don't know. I don't think I've seen this one. Why haven't I seen this version? I don't know who left bottom is. Center, we have Orson Welles. I think that's his name, Orson Welles. Yeah, Orson Welles, American director and actor. He did a really good job, but there's a scene that it's supposed to be dramatic, and everybody. I can't. Once we're past that scene, I'll talk about that scene. But it's supposed to be dramatic and important, and I just can't stand from laughing at that scene. Just how he. It's hilarious. Again, but he did a really good job, and he has a very deep voice. He's very like. It's a very dramatic adaptation. You can tell that he has a very strong background in like acting and drama. Then we have Timothy, I think this time's Timothy Dalton, I think. This is top right. Timothy Dalton, sorry, not Dalton. British actor. This is from the 1983 version of Jane Eyre. This is a mini series, which I believe is the most faithful of all of the Jane Eyres. And he is one of my favorite Rochesters. It's just, he's so good. He's so good. It's between Toby and Timothy Dalton. I'm sorry. And yes, we have the next one, I think, is Hurt. I forget his name. His first name is it just escapes me. This is from the 1996 Hollywood version of Jane Eyre. So yeah, we have quite a lot of Jane Eyre adaptations, you guys. And he didn't. You know what? The very first time I ever heard or watched Jane Eyre, it was his version, and I was not in love. Again, though, I mean, full disclaimer, I was probably 12 years old, and so I was not watching this for the romance, because I was not about to like fall in love with an old man. I was watching it for the story. To me, it was like, ooh, it's a ghost story in a house, and so that's why I started the movie. I was like, this looks interesting. I continued watching the movie, but not because of the romance. Definitely not because of Rochester. He has a few memorable moments here and there, just like all the others. But I think the standout in this adaptation is definitely the actress that played Jane Eyre. She did a really good job, I think. And the soundtrack is really good also. If you ever get the chance, it's on Spotify. Check out the soundtrack for that one. I liked it. And finally, I forget his name. Oh my goodness. Can somebody remind me what's his name? I'm so bad at names. And somebody brought it up earlier. Somebody actually said this guy in... Hold on. Let me just look it up. Jane Eyre 2011. The cast is... Hold on. Who's the cast? Michael Fassbender. Yes. Actually, I don't know if it was Crusher or was it Red Tempest in the Discord server, who, when we brought up like who would you have cast as Barney in the Blue Castle, and he brought up Michael Fassbender, and just saying, like, he has a really good look for Rochester, and he does a really good job of Rochester. Is he my favorite? No. Why? Because like the chemistry was good, but the chemistry for the 2006 version is so good. Like Rochester and Jane, they have such good banter in the 2006 version. The 2011 version, it's good banter and there's chemistry, but it's just a little bit different. This a movie can only cover so much, and they did a really good job with the chemistry, given the fact that it was just a movie. But of course, series will always build upon their character and build upon their relationship much better. So yeah. If you have watched any of these series, tell me who is your favorite Rochester. Do you agree with me? Should I do a tiering system? I think if you force me to choose, I will pick Toby as number 1, Timothy as number 2. And I'm sorry, Orson, I know you're a great actor, but I'm gonna have to pick Michael as number 3 and you as number 4, and then Hurt as, I think, William Hurt. Is it William Hurt? Now that I look at his name, William Hurt. Yes, it is William Hurt. Yes, the name just came to me out of the blue. Then William Hurt, and then Ciarán Hinds, and then I don't know who this guy at the bottom left is. Akihana says, isn't that guy at the bottom right the one from Moulin Rouge? I don't know. I have to watch it. If anybody knows what's the other adaptation that I'm missing out and where I can watch it, I would love to see it, because I do love a good Jane Eyre adaptation. Missing here is a 1970 something movie, but it's absolutely, I could not finish it, you guys. It was depressing. Not that the actors were bad, it's just I could not. 1970s Jane Eyre adaptation, and I think this was Jane Eyre from 1970, starring George Scott and Susanna York. Again, they're both very good actors. I think I saw them in other movies of that time, but it's just not the best in my opinion. Let's see. Michael Fassbender, because he also plays Magneto in the X-Men movies. I haven't watched X-Men. I know Fergie tells me I should watch X-Men movies, and maybe one day I'll watch the X-Men movies. But yeah, he has been in other movies that I think I've watched, so it'll be lovely to see him do Barney on The Blue Castle. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that would be good, because he's an excellent actor. Yes, he is an A-tier actor. Very, very good actor for sure. So yeah, you guys are recognizing him. He's Magneto. I don't know. I haven't watched the X-Men movies. All right, so that's that. Here are some more scenes, but I probably should not delve into them, because I might go into spoiler territory. I mean, you guys know there's gonna be a romance here. Like, come on, you guys. All right, so I think that's all I have for you guys. We'll talk more about Jane Eyre in the next read along. Join me. I'll try to do something on Friday. Oh my goodness, it's already Wednesday. Oh gosh, so much to do. I'll try to carve out a time on Friday, probably in the morning. So, well, morning Pacific time. So do be on the lookout just in case. Check out my Twitter or X for notification, or if not, just follow and subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell so you get notification of that. Also, if you want, go to my Discord, where I also let you guys know I'm going live, and you can also support your magpie. You know what to do. All right, everybody. Crusher is like, bruh, how have you not watched X-Men? I don't know. I have not watched X-Men. I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Is that the one with what's his name? The guy? No, is that it? Wolverine? I know about the Wolverine because I like the actor, but I haven't watched the movies. Yeah, I know. I am missing out on stuff. eventually I'll catch up to them. Anyway, for now, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. I'm off to get some dinner. It's 6:45 here. My tummy is rumbling, you guys. Until then, you guys, be sure to watch out for eyes. Please watch out for eyes. And if you see a strange creature sitting by the side of the road, know that you probably are going to be in some trouble soon. All right, everybody, take care. Lovely to hang out with you guys. Until the next read along. Yes, bye-bye.